the book is broken down sort of into two sections. The first part is more like, what's the base around you? Like, why do you potentially spend poorly? And the second part is, what can you do about that? But as you say, the problem is a lot of people they ignore those little small things, thinking it's just a small amount, it doesn't really matter. But as you say, small little things over time add up to a big hole or a big mountain. And that's what most people that's what they don't understand, is the power of those small daily movements up or down. And if you can get a small daily surplus, you're going to do well in life. But you get a small daily deficit, you're going to do very poorly.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mouthy Money podcast. I am joined, as usual, by Chris Chu, who is head of consumer finance at communications agency MRM. Chris, hello. Welcome to the pod for another day.
Hi, Ed. How's it going?
Yeah, good, thank you. Very well, actually. I'm very excited today because Mouthy Money runs regular book competitions where we give away books about money and try and help people kind of gain a bit more knowledge and obviously, you know, provide a bit of insight into to kind of deeper levels of talking about money and finance. Today, as a result of our latest book competition, I'm very pleased that we are joined by the author of the book himself, Mat Megens. Matt, hello and welcome to the podcast.
Hello, good morning. Thank you so much for having me on here.
It's absolute pleasure. So, as I said, we're giving away 6 copies of Matt's book, and I'm going to get onto the title. There you go. Chris is already showing up. For those of you watching on YouTube, you can see it. I have also got my copy, which is my review copy, which is one of the ones we won't be giving away. Oh, look, all 3 of us have got it. There we go. So what we're going to do today, because the book, which is called 10 Things I Love About Money by Matt himself, is very much a story of kind of his background and how the way he thinks about money and the way he wants to help people think about money has kind of developed and grown over time, and really kind of in his experiences that have led into that. So Matt, before we kind of take a deep dive into what has really kind of been your motivation to write the book, give us the briefest of kind of outlines of who you are, where you come from, because you're not a typical Brit guest that we have on. You are from somewhere slightly more interesting. So tell us about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it is very relevant because when I wrote the book, it's very personal, has a lot of anecdotes, and it's not just a professional academic text. It very much is about real life and a lot of my experience. So just very quickly, so I was born on a farm in Canada. I had my parents, they were Dutch immigrants. So they were, I guess, immigrants to Canada, and they were, it's just very simple farming life that I grew up on. Didn't have a whole lot of money, and was raised very much in a be careful what you spend, be careful about debt. So I always had this underpinning in terms of how I was brought up. But I then went to school, studied electrical engineering, got an engineering job, made a lot of money relative to where I was in life that I had never had before. And again, that experience helped promote some of the ideas within the book. I then moved into finance. So that then led to a career in finance. That's what brought me to the UK. So I came over here to start a career in investment banking. So I had this professional career within investment banking and fixed income through the credit crisis, so that 2008 period, those crazy times. And then that led to more adventures in finance within London. So working within private equity, working within asset management, working within global development finance for World Bank companies. So I have a lot of experience in professional finance. And that then inspired what I'm doing currently, which is this fintech called HyperJar, which is trying to help people to spend their money better, which also inspired the book. So there is a logical sequence that sort of led to me where I am today. However, like I said, the book it doesn't really delve too much into my professional expertise, even though I was, in the highest levels of finance. It's the boring, simple stuff, which is what's most important. I think that's the biggest lesson here. So I have worked with very complex financial products, but the simple stuff is really what is most important. And the big jobs can get you big money, but that's where you get in trouble. And the book is more about, I guess, the psychology and the little things that you can do, that anyone can do, without having to be an expert, without having to have all this other expertise. But yeah, that's a quick journey. Like, it was just a very innocuous start that then led to
that kind of career. I mean, obviously you come from a kind of, super, normal background, Canadian farming. I think it's interesting to see that you kind of moving into the city and that kind of high finance and all kind of thing, which I think a lot of the audience will probably think, is quite inaccessible world. But from your perspective, is there anything that you feel like you learned doing that kind of career that easily translated, or was it more for you about stepping back from that and thinking about, no, what really matters it to me personally when you were kind of coming up with HyperJar, but then also writing the book?
I think the career, so one thing is it gave me a bigger understanding about how the world works. So working within the investment bank, you just sort of see how the world works, how government works with big institutions, how financing works around the world. So just a better understanding. But I would say that in terms of like the startup, for example, and then the book, the things that were most valuable were it's essentially the network. So the contacts that you make, the people that you meet to make things happen, the confidence that you get to try to meet new people, realizing that more is available to you than you think if you just sort of ask or try. So I think it's more almost like it's more psychological. The actual technical skills, hard skills, almost anyone can learn those, especially nowadays with the internet. So like for me, it was really the network, the confidence, and it also gave me ideas about what is not working, what's not quite working, what's broken, how can I fix that. So it's really hard to describe things that I benefited
Yeah.
from.
I find it interesting because often you get this kind of conflation between when people talk about particularly things like government budgets, where they talk about, well, if a government budget's like a household budget, or if, if you think about finance in the way you think about a household budget, but often those don't translate well. So that's why I find your move from that kind of, if we call it anything high finance, towards creating HyperJar, which is very much about kind of helping people with their personal finances. So what was that transition like for you, and what kind of brought you to that idea to create HyperJar and build the product that is? And also do tell us give us an explanation of what HyperJar is, so the listeners can better understand.
Yeah, so first of all, HyperJar is it's an app that anyone can download for free on Google or iOS. And it looks like a neobank type thing, like your Mons or your Revolut, but it isn't a bank, but it effectively
Mm.
is an app where you can store money and a payment card. So you get a prepaid debit card that you could use for contactless. But the difference is it's more of a complement to your bank account. So it's not trying to replace your bank account. It's trying to be an additional tool that you might put in spending money into it to help you to control your spend. So the main goal is to try to provide a bit of healthy friction so that you can spend better. Because in this day of sort of contactless and buy now, pay later and credit options, it's very easy for your money to disappear without you knowing it because it's just so easy to spend it. So HyperJar is a set of tools to help you spend better. And every feature that we design in HyperJar is with that purpose. And that might also means that when you spend money, it's very social, whether you have a spouse, a partner, children. So we try to create tools to make that social spend easier. So that's HyperJar in a nutshell. And when I first started HyperJar, it was actually a very esoteric financing problem I was trying to solve within supply chain. So I was working within a supply chain business at Morgan Stanley, and I saw a model that to me was broken. So I had an idea to try to fix that. Real briefly, I called it crowdsourced working capital. So imagine you have savings. You're just a person, you have savings. At that time, interest rates were like 0%. So you couldn't put your money in a savings account and earn anything. I thought, what if I could save my money with, for example, Tesco? So what if I could save my money with Tesco and Tesco will pay me an interest rate that's greater than what the bank is paying me because I'm going to shop at Tesco anyways. And that way it becomes a win-win. I make a higher return. Tesco gets some working capital from me. And that was the idea. So it was more of a solution to try and solve Tesco's financing problems, but it would help. The consumer was required to do that. But in the process of trying to create this, I learned it was very difficult to try to get a Tesco on board because I'm a nobody. Who am I? They need
Mm.
billions of capital. That's going to be crazy to try and get billions of people saving with Tesco. So in the end, what happened is it just evolved where we ended up creating a consumer product that was useful. So we needed sort of, it's like chicken and egg. So where do we start? So let's make a useful consumer product. What's missing in the consumer market? We thought there's nothing that helps people to spend well. And that's aligned with helping people to hopefully save with like a Tesco, just as an example. We didn't do that with Tesco.
Mm.
And it just went from there. And as we sort of worked on tools that would be sort of useful that don't exist, we came on to the idea of a kids card. So for the parent to manage their kids' spending, and that became very popular and sort of took off. And then it sort of became its own thing where that original product was almost the lost in the ether. It's still there, but it became a secondary thing. And the main thing was like people just wanted tools to help spend better. And we started to see more demand for people just saying, yeah, I just need something to organize my money. Like it's just a mess. And this is like a really helpful
Yeah.
organization tool. So yeah, it was an evolution.
Chris, I know you were going to sign up for the travel perks, weren't you? That's what caught your attention, and I
Yeah,
think
I've been tidying my money up for a long time, Matt. It's taken me several weekends and months and all the rest of it, and having these conversations has helped me with it. But I do travel over to Ireland quite a lot for family reasons, and I find myself not getting organised when it comes to sort of spending abroad. So that definitely caught my eye as just like money that I'm frittering away, spending badly, to quote what you said on it. So that's something that I found kind of useful, and also that kind of tracking thing, making sure that I know what I'm spending when I'm over there, or prepaying it so that I know stick to my budget rather than getting carried away in the middle of what's happening over there and ending up overspending. All of that could kind of add up, and it might leave an extra, 50, £60 left over that I can invest into my pension or into my children's JISA or whatever, and that can all make a big difference towards the end of the day. So definitely kind of understand where you're coming from with that. I think one thing I did want to ask, actually, if it was all right, was around the book's called 10 Things I Love About Money. What is it you most love about it? Or what is it you most kind of learned to love through this process of HyperJar and writing the book that you think our listeners would benefit mostly from?
Well, I think the main thing I love about money is that money gives you freedom. So with money, it gives you freedom to do what you want to do to live life. Because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to live our life and be happy. If you have children, you're trying to spend more time with them. So that's the power of money. For me, that's the power of money. Money is freedom. So, but the problem is money becomes a stress point for most people, and often because they get into trouble. And they get into trouble because, for very innocent reasons, because of the pressures of life. And once you start getting down that path, it becomes harder and harder and harder. So I was trying to reverse this. And by the way, it's not just for people who struggle, but even people with high incomes. Like money becomes like a stress. And I quote it in the book, but more money, more problems from Notorious B.I.G. And it doesn't matter how much money you have, stress is often always there. And I was trying to change the conversation to be like, turn this into a positive point. Try to make this into something that sort of empowers you, but you need to get control of it. Even you mentioned that your travel is like, there are little things you can do to get control that completely change the mental side of money. But for me, money is freedom, and everyone has the potential to sort of access that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. We've used a phrase before about money can become a millstone that sort of hangs around your neck and doesn't allow you to get your head up and see what's coming down the line. And I think a lot of I broadly made, sometimes accidentally, sometimes by design, some sensible decisions around sort of long-term saving and all that kind of stuff. And I've been lucky enough to be in that position. But you mentioned at the start about this, your parents' simple approach to saving and to debt. That really resonated with me because from a young age, I grew up in a sort of not a well-off household, two hardworking parents in sort of blue-collar jobs who were Irish immigrants in London, and they absolutely terrified of credit cards. It was like, if anything comes in the door, burn it before anyone could put their hands on it, because otherwise we're going to end up with the door being kicked down, And that was because ultimately they knew that could spiral completely out of control. So we had ups and downs with our money. We lived through sort of Thatcher's Britain in the late 80s and into the 90s, when Britain went through some bumps and all that kind of good stuff. And so learned about the rough end of money. Don't get me wrong, there were times when there was not a lot of it about, but also realized that there are definitely ways that you can make these things worse if you're not very aware and cognizant of them. And debt was one of the lessons that I absolutely learned. So it was only when I realized that actually having a credit card meant that I needed to improve my credit score in the run up to hopefully saving up for a mortgage, that I started to use a credit card and pay it off in full every month, and still do that to kind of boost my credit score. And that was kind of news to me. It didn't really make much sense. It was kind of counterintuitive. So the thing you said around debt there and discipline around debt, that came from my dad and was really kind of important. It's something I've taken forward. And the idea that even, sometimes when you slip into your overdraft, even then that lesson kind of stays with me, because you're like, well, I'm just frittering cash away, even if it's small amounts. I'd rather it was compounding in the opposite direction rather than in a negative direction, and just trying to keep the whole thing moving in an upward trajectory. And after a while, you can really start to see the benefits of that. So, yeah, I also, the idea of the money being psychological and trying to see it not as a millstone, but as a route to something else, I think helps. And it makes it easier for me to compartmentalize and plan for the long term, the medium term, and the short term. So, yeah, I completely hear what you're saying on that. And I think the fact that the book covers that and gives people practical steps to be able to do that, simple rules to spend and save your way to wealth and happiness, as it says on the cover. I think that's always a good thing.
so. Looking at the book now, I think the thing I noted when I wrote the original review on Mouthy Money, was the tone is set right at the start when you quote Sun Tzu and Elle Brooke, who is the lead character in Legally Blonde, on the first page, and I thought that was a good tone. So what the way it's structured, for anybody who wants to go out and read, and we'll put links to where you can go and buy it in the show notes. You've got 10 rules basically, which I assume align with the 10 things you love about money, and then you've got a bonus rule at the end. Now, breaking those down, I'd say a lot of, I'd say 2/3 of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is more about taking care of the more stuff that's directly in front of you day to day, and then the kind of the final third is really about how you then use that to open up the bigger picture. Is that fair? And do you think that's a good way? Now, obviously, you think that, but it's a good way to look at your finances, isn't it? About taking care of the little stuff so you can take care of the big stuff. That's right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the book is broken down sort of into two sections. The first part is more like, what's the base around you? Like, why do you potentially spend poorly? And the second part is, what can you do about that? But as you say, those little things is the cornerstone to any chance of success. Chris, you made the point about, with the overdraft, like, the problem is a lot of people they ignore those little small things, thinking it's just a small amount, it doesn't really matter. But as you say, small little things over time add up to a big hole or a big mountain, and that's what most people that's what they don't understand, is the power of those small daily movements up or down. And if you can get a small daily surplus, you're going to do well in life. But you get a small daily deficit, you're going to do very poorly. And that's the main point I'm trying to make, is get that revert. And by the way, this also applies for high net worth. So if you're someone on 7 figures even, but you're living in deficit, you see this all the time with sports stars and like people who come across a lot of money with their big entourages, you get in trouble. If you just any level of deficit, you get in trouble. So the book tries to emphasize that small bit and how important it is. I see so much stuff on TikTok. I'm on social media now trying to sort of get the message out there, but so many people say, so many influencers, like, doesn't matter if you spend your £6 latte. It's all about investing. It's all about, invest. It's like they're doing a big disservice because they're skipping the first 9 steps of the 10-step plan to be able to invest. And if you get that wrong, especially when you make money, then you're really going to be in trouble, because you're going to sort of then blow it all and look back and say, what did I do? I blew it all. So the little things are so critical. And the book tries to explain that in detail, like the little thing. Well, here's why it's so important. Here's what it is. And now what do you do about that? Now that you got that tiny surplus, what do you do about that? And here's some practical steps.
Yeah, we bang on about it here. We talk about, the most important thing for your money is having a plan. And I think because we tend to talk a little bit more about the kind of that wealth and, growth and protecting it side of things, it is easy to forget that you need to be in the right position to start that journey. And that means making sure that everything else you've got going on this side is so basically it's both hands moving together. Do you think? It's hard to reduce it all down. Is there one kind of rule that you would really kind of live and die by from the book? Like, if you get everything else wrong, please get this one thing right. What would that be?
To me, the most powerful rule and the most powerful concept, I call it the dawn, your daily one number. This is how much you, I guess, on a daily basis, first of all, how much do you earn? So if your income is whatever per year, divide that by 365, how much you earn per day, and then try and get your expenses for the year. How much do you spend per day? So try and find it if you're in deficit or if you're in surplus. Because once you know that number, and for most people, it's going to be tiny. Like, even if you're making, like I said, 6 figures, it's often that surplus or deficit is going to be quite small. It might be £10, it might be £20, because people usually, as you earn more, you usually spend more. So being aware of that daily number, just being aware of it. If it's £10, if it's £100, if it's -£5, it changes entirely how you think about your next decision in a way that becomes natural now. So now if I know my surplus is £5, so I just know my surplus is £5, when I go to the Tesco Express to buy what I need to buy, I may not then buy the Coke Zero that's £3, because like I might eliminate my daily surplus to 0 because it's only £5. So knowing that daily surplus or deficit is a life-changing thing. And most people don't even know how much they earn per day. Your annual income, but most people, they don't know. They don't have an intuitive feel for how much they earn per day, let alone their expenses. But doing that exercise, which doesn't take long, will change your entire approach to how you spend, which makes it more natural and easier. And that's my whole goal. Make it easy so it's natural, habitual, so it's not an anxiety point. I don't want it to be like a stressful budget with like 1,000 spreadsheets. Like, make it easy and a habitual thing.
What about for people who, because I think that there's so much going on in the world and it has been so much going on in the world for a while now, it feels almost hackneyed to say that because there's a lot going on out there. People who feel like they don't have that kind of control where it's, inflation is constant and you're not getting the pay rise you want. And these external factors maybe that you feel hamper your ability to take control in the way that you say that. What would you say to those people? What can they do to, even if it's just a mindset thing, what would you say to them?
It's a good point. Like the economy is tough. Like there's no kid around with there. Like the economy is tough for most people, and who knows when this is gonna end, because there's so many different things happening, whether it's global politics, whether it's AI, after effects of money printing from COVID. There's so many things that's trickling through the economy that we have no control over. So the first thing I would say is there are things that's bigger than us, and you have to try your best not to stress about those things, even if they affect us. Like it's just because you can't control it. So it's just wasted stress. And you need all your energy for the things that you can control. So I'm not saying everyone can figure this out perfectly, but everyone can improve the situation. So my first point is focus on what you can control, because if there's a massive tsunami that's going to swoop over everybody, it's going to happen. So it's almost like you can't worry about it, as hard as that might sound. But it's the same concept. Like there are things that will affect everybody. And usually when things affect everybody, governments try to do some kind of measure to try and deal with that. You need to focus on the mistakes that you're making. So focus on what you can control, because as you focus on those things, first of all, you get more confidence. You start to sort of feel a little bit better because you are doing what you can control. The world's going to happen, but focus on what you can control. And that alone is going to sort of reduce anxiety. And that alone is going to put you in a better position. And that alone is going to sort of just give you more of a clarity of mind to then make bigger decisions. Because you may need to change where you live. You may need to change your job. You may need to change your relationship situation. But if you have all this constant stress, you can't think clearly. So focus on what you can control, make small changes. And if you keep doing that, you're going to get to a better place, no matter what's happening in the world. So that's my main points I would say about that.
I think that's great advice. As somebody who listened to the godfather of AI last night, Jeffrey Hinton, saying there's a 20% chance that it's going to wipe out all humanity, I think maybe, Matt, I should take your advice and focus on my ISA. Because I mean, it's interesting, it's philosophical, but I was just like, wow, okay.
So nothing matters at all. It's like the nihilist charter, isn't it? Like we're all going to be wiped out by AI anyway, so who cares?
Well, this is it. It's quite a stressful conversation. So no, instead, I'll go and read your daily one number and start applying that. I think that's the only thing I can do. So
go on, Matt. You're going to add something. Yeah,
like I say, there's a good point you made there. Like they're always like sort of nihilistic and doom mongering things, and some of them happen, some of them don't. Some things come that no one expects, and there's periods in time, like look at during like say World War II, and there's periods where like the whole world is the depression, like things get really really bad, and at that point everyone just has to sort of get their heads down and try and figure it out. But there's no point worrying about it because it may or may not happen. Just worry about what you can focus on. Again, try to enjoy every day, like focus on like your relationships. So that's what really matters. But as you say, like there's always going to be predictions, but you can't plan for those things. So don't worry about those things. But because if it doesn't happen, you don't want to be sitting there, with your bunker and like, oh, I just wasted 5 years of my life worrying about this thing and didn't enjoy life in the meantime.
It's interesting that money and worry, the word money and worry are often synonymous. Like we say them in tandem so often, money worries. And, the psychological approach to it really can be quite freeing. And it's something I've been focused on recently. I know we're kind of joking about the Jeffrey Hinton thing, but I have been taking a really good hard look at my money and seeing what I can do on a small level to make sure that my two daughters have a better life, that my wife has a better pension, that I have a better pension. And, again, you listen to this and the doom mongering side of things around AI, for example, we brought it up. That's one of them. The other is, a war could break out tomorrow and all this kind of stuff. And you think, well, what's the point in planning for a pension in 35 years' time? And that can get on top of you and you worry about it. And will we lose our home? I remember I spoke to a contact of mine who said he was worrying about the insurance policy on his office because it doesn't cover bombardment from above, because he's kind of convinced that at some point London's going to be bombed. And you hear this kind of negativity around. And then, funnily enough, 2 days later, I was like, right, okay, I'm going to sort out my pension because that's what I can control. I can control what I invest in. It was almost like an act of faith. It's like, okay, well, if that happens, there's nothing I can do about it. But if it doesn't happen and I don't have a good pension in place in 30 years' time, I'll be thinking, what the hell was I worrying about at the time? So doing what you can in the face of uncontrollables, that completely speaks to me, Matt. And it's something I've really been focused on trying to do more of, which is those little steps that ultimately will make us better prepared if the apocalypse does come anyway. So there you go. At least I'll have a cash pile to escape somewhere with. So there.
That's exactly right. Like I said, it's you do this in a way where, because even that gives people happiness. Like you sort of have a purpose, you sort of have a goal, you're working towards something, and you say, and the steps they're only positive. There's no downside to doing that. So you don't do it in a way where you're torturing yourself over it. You do it in a way where it's it's good for you, and you sort of get a sense of purpose from it, and you're going to you're helping take care of your loved ones. Like there's no downside to that. And as you say, worst case situation, well, then AI takes over, and you sort of have this cash pile there. But if it doesn't happen, well, you have the cash pile there, and your daughters are better off.
Yeah. I think we'll end on that more than positive note, not Chris's apocalypse that he's trying to keep bringing back.
I'm just quoting other people's apocalyptic visions that I'm listening to, Ed. I'm the controllables. I'm absolutely with Matt.
Just to remind everybody, we have a competition giveaway on the Mouthy Money website. We are giving away 6 copies of Matt's book, and so please do give that a sign up if you can. For anybody who doesn't want to wait and just wants to get their hands on a copy of the book, Matt will give us the link. Where can you go and buy it, Matt?
So it's anywhere where books are sold. So Amazon, Waterstone. Yep, you just search on either my name, Mat Megens, or 10 Things I Love About Money, and you should be able to find it.
Brilliant. And we'll put some links through on the page as well, on the episode too, so you can find that nice and easily. Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for giving us a bit of insight into your kind of your journey that brought you to writing this book. We'll see you all again very soon. So Matt, thank you.
No, thank you. I enjoyed this conversation. It's great.
Brilliant. And Chris, thanks as ever. Apocalypse and whatnot.
The only thing to do in the face of the apocalypse, Ed, is contribute to your pension and saving your ISA. That's it.
Actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Thank you, everybody. We'll end it there. We'll see you all again very soon. Thank you and goodbye.